So fear. Fear is something that punks everybody. It pushes everybody around. And it's like the invisible force the primary invisible force that keeps people stuck in a life that they don't even want to be in. Fear is a motherfucker. Because it shows up with a lot of different faces, you know? It's a chameleon. Fear can show up like judgment. It can show up as nerves. Fear can show up as excuses, you know? What if you had no fear? What life would you build if you had no fear? If you didn't care about the judgment from your friends and your family members, if you wanted to just up and leave it all and just pack your bags and chase after the dream that was in your heart and you had zero fear, where would your life go? Because, man, I want you guys, the reason I'm doing this channel for everybody is because I want to build you into your best. It doesn't really matter to me whether you join the military, whether you build a business, whether you help grow a business, you know, or whether you work your way from the inside up in a business, you know, and you become a senior leader. But what I really want for every single one of you guys is for you to become your absolute best. It is so sad when we look around and we see this world that we live in, and there's so many people that have given up, you know? It sucks to give up. I've been there. Fear might cause us to give up. So, I want to share a couple stories with you guys about fear in my life and then talk to you guys about how to overcome it, because there are a few things that most people are really, really worried about in life. Fear of ill health. People are scared of getting sick and dying. They're scared of being poor. They are scared of bad fortune. They are scared of judgment. Those are really the big things. Fear of judgment, fear of poverty, fear of ill health, and fear of misfortune, bad luck. Your family and your friends and the life that you're living now, you're pretty much addicted to those things. An addiction is something that you can't go without. If you were to try to walk away, I don't know if you live by yourself, if you live with your wife, your husband, if you live with your parents, but if you were to try to break away, it would be very, very difficult because you're addicted to that life. You have an emotional addiction to the life that you're living. That's why it's so hard for people when they're going through a breakup to feel at peace and at ease about what happened, is because being with a person creates an emotional addiction. It creates a feeling. And almost like magnets, when you start pulling a magnet apart, the force tries to keep it together. That's the emotional addiction in your life. But if you keep pressing those or pushing those magnets apart, eventually they break free, and each of the magnets are free to go do their own thing. And fear will keep a magnet, and emotional addiction will keep a magnet pulling together. But where would you go if you were to break off and break the emotional addictions that you have in your life? What if the friends, the family, the place of work that you go to, the life that you've built, what if you weren't attached to any of it? It's funny that we feel so inclined to be loyal to a life that we've built unconsciously. You know, our lives become a byproduct of what we think about and the environment that we're put in. Like, your parents told you to behave a certain way, so you behaved a certain way. Your brothers, your siblings, And as you progress through life, the way that your environment molded you and shaped you, helped you, you made decisions that created the life that you're living. You became familiar with the life that you have. But what if you weren't familiar with it? What if you weren't addicted to it? What type of life would you create? What would your level up look like? Fear, when you started thinking about creating that life that you actually want, you started thinking about creating the human, the leader that you want to be, it can be scary. You know? I grew up with a lot of fear. You know, my dad taught me a ton about being a man. He taught me a ton about having good character. He used to take me hunting and fishing all the time. And being around him, I had a lot of fear. I had fear of making a mistake. I had fear of letting him down. I had fear of going out on a hunt, a bear hunt, and getting injured or hurt or killed. I had fear. We did raccoon hunts. I had fear of one night we were chasing this raccoon. It was like midnight, and we treed this raccoon with the dogs, and the raccoon and the dogs were in this blackberry bush fighting. And the raccoon comes out, and I'm standing there in my teens with a lantern, and the raccoon comes out, and it's just running right at me, and I thought this thing was going to jump and slice my throat. You know, so that was my childhood, a lot of fear. And I remember one day where I started treating fear differently. Like a lot of times fear, when I was really young, caused me to freeze. You know, they say that fear causes you to fight, flight, to run, or to freeze. And when I was young, it caused me to freeze a lot. And when I was like 14 or 15 years old and I was on the high school wrestling team, we went out to this tournament, and I'm sitting on the bleachers, and we were staying the night there before the wrestling tournament kicked off the next day. But another team was there, and some of the guys from our team were getting in an argument with some guys from the other team. And I'm sitting on the bleachers watching the whole thing happen, and the bleachers were elevated, so they were on like kind of like a balcony type thing. And then our team and the other team were down on the basketball court, like arguing with each other. One kid shoves the other kid, and I remember our team and their team got in a big old fight. A couple of the guys that I was sitting with, they jumped off the bleachers and jumped down onto the basketball court and got into it and started fighting. And the whole time I just watched and I froze. You know? And I remember that day being very pissed off and disappointed with myself that I didn't make a decision to jump and go and be part of the fight and take care of my guys. And I allowed fear to push me around. Well, as I got into, at that point, I made a decision that I would never freeze again when it came to fear. And ever since that day, at 14 or 15 years old, whenever there's a conflict that breaks out, whenever there's something that's happening around me that makes me feel scared, I move to the point of conflict. And that was a very shaping and defining moment. You guys got to decide how you're going to respond to fear in your life. You got to decide whether when you get scared to make that jump, when you get scared to do whatever it is that you want to go do, are you going to fight? Are you going to run? Or are you going to freeze? I'll tell you, when you start choosing to move towards the fear, you'll find your purpose. I truly believe that. I believe that if you romance your fears, if you start entertaining them, kind of like you ask them out on a date, you find that they're not so scary and you fall in love with them. I was scared as hell to join the military. You know, when I was going to a community college and I just got so pissed off with the way that I was living, I made a decision to change my situation because I was drinking and getting drunk every day around noon and 2 o'clock, no purpose, no direction, going to school with a buzz. Like, who does that? Come on. Like, what kind of shit is that? And I was destined for a shitty life. And I got sick and tired of my own shit. And I said, I got to do something. So I signed up for the military, got desperate, and I was nervous, but I just leaned into it. As my career progressed, you know, I got to basic training. Basic training, I was scared every single day. I remember constantly being on edge, worrying that the drill sergeants were going to yell at me, get me in trouble, or I was going to be in trouble, or the guys were going to be in trouble. I was constantly on edge the whole time in basic. And I was a student leader there too. Basic training was a wild time. I actually went to a co-ed basic. So I was put as a student leader after about week 1 in basic training. And we had women and men in my basic training class because I was going in as an engineer, civil engineer. And the women, they slept on the second floor. The guys, they slept on the first floor. And my job was basically, to keep them from mingling and to be a liaison between the drill sergeants and the students. But I was really cool, and I was friends with everybody in my basic training class, the company. And so my friends thought that they could get away with some shit. And there was guys in my basic training that would sneak out and go steal candy from the go buy candy from the gas station, come back, hide it in the barracks, and then they would sell it out of the barracks. So they would buy a candy bar for like $1 and then sell it for 20 out of the barracks. I found out about it, and I had to decide whether or not I was gonna snitch on the guy or what I was gonna do. And every time I found an issue like that, I just tried to handle it internally, keep it out of the drill sergeant's line of fire, keep it out of their visibility. And so I told my friend, I was like, you gotta fucking stop this shit. You're gonna get us all like in trouble. We're all gonna get smoked. We're all gonna get, dropped from the class, have to restart, kicked out of basic training. And that hard conversation that I had with him, it actually worked. He ran this like candy ring for like several weeks, and he was actually a recycle. He was a guy that got in trouble in a previous cycle and sent back to basic training to do it again because he'd gotten in trouble. But me as a student leader, I found out, and I was like, kind of like just taking care of the guys, and sometimes you have to do that when you're taking care of people. People don't always make the best decisions, and the thing that I did was I just tried to point people in the right direction. Handle things at the lowest level possible. And that's what good leaders do. Good leaders handle things at the lowest level. They do bring things up that need to be brought up, but they do everything in their power to handle things at the lowest level if they can. And so that got smashed. And then another issue that we had, there was 2 more things. We used to do these fights on the weekends. So in basic training, the weekends were kind of like cleaning time. That's all we really did was cleaned the barracks. We had to still wake up at the same time every day, like I think it was 4 o'clock or 4:30. We had to still hit our chow halls. We still had to go eat at the same time. But we had these lulls in the day, and what we used to do is after everything was done, we'd go into the largest bay that we could find, and we'd have these battles inside. We'd put 2 people in the middle, and we would fight each other. The only rule is you weren't allowed to punch somebody in the face. So 2 guys would start, they would fight, they'd punch, they'd grapple, they'd go to submit each other, not knock each other out, but submit each other. And then after 30 seconds, another guy would come in. And so I'm a student leader, and this like fight thing is happening on the weekends. I thought it was a good time. And technically it wasn't really breaking any rules, but we probably could have gotten in a lot of trouble for it. So every 30 seconds, somebody would jump in. Next thing you know, you have a whole platoon of people fighting each other inside of a bay. And I remember punching a guy in the stomach. I get hit in the ribs, and then out of nowhere, I get punched in the side of the ear. And that would go on forever until either a drill sergeant walked up and we'd stop, or pretty much everybody was just gassed or fucking hurt, and we would stop. And we did that for a while. So in that example, I never stopped those fights. Maybe I should have, but I didn't. And then there was another thing that happened. I was walking through the barracks, and I went to the second floor, and the girls were up there on the second floor. And some of the guys had snuck up there, and the girls were blocking off the hallway by standing in the doorway of one of the bays. And as I'm walking by, there's a couple of dudes in there with the girls. And I'm not going to say what was going on here on video, but what you guys are thinking was probably happening inside of those wall lockers. And so I had to talk to those guys, and I had to talk to everybody, because if that would have gone to the drill sergeant's desk, if they would have found out about it, we all would have been kicked out again. So my basic training experience was a lot of being worried and scared that everybody was going to have to restart and start over. And my entire military career as an enlisted soldier, infantry officer, ranger, followed that theme of being nervous and scared that we were going to lose or fail, or I was going to fail, or the team was going to fail. And each of those times, this is the message I want to give you guys. is that when fear hits, whether it's you're doing something, you're trying to change your life, or whether the people around you are doing something that you know is wrong, the thing that cures fear is action. You have to become somebody that doesn't freeze, that doesn't run. You have to become somebody that fights. You have to become somebody that makes a difference in those moments. And so that's the message for today, guys, is that fear is going to push you around in life. And if you freeze and if you run, you're never going to get what you want. You're never going to accomplish success in your mission. Everybody ended up graduating basic training. That as a group, we graduated basic training. There's a couple of guys that got in a little bit of trouble later on, but point is doing the right thing in the face of fear is the way through it. So you know right now, if you're at a crossroads with your life, your business, your career, if you're at a crossroads and you're feeling nervous about what to do next, the right thing is what you do next. Not the right thing according to everybody else's expectations, the right thing according to your expectations. You got to go inward. It's not my job to tell you what to do exactly. It's your job to tell you what to do and to listen to it. That's the message for today, and that's the story, guys. Basic training, dealing with fear. I hope you guys enjoy this video. Enjoy the week ahead. I'll see you in the next one. Conquer all.